Hello, everyone. Great to be able to speak to everybody out there and to talk about another installment that we're doing for the Ontario People's Front to enable voters out there in Ottawa-Centre or other ridings that we're running candidates to get more acquainted with what we're all about. Now, the issue I want to talk today, again, I'm Raymond Samuels, leader of the Ontario People's Front, a new party, Ontario political party that's not left, right, and center. The issue I want to talk about today in particular is the issue of global warming and climate change. The message I want to leave with everybody today is that there's the common convention that the Green Party is the great alternative to the NDP for people who are concerned about the destruction of our environment. But my message for everybody today is that if you're looking for the Green Party to be as a sincere, progressive alternative when it comes to the environment, whether it comes to human rights or other sort of social policy issues, think again. Again, the Green Party, just like the NDP and other parties, there's a lot of good people in the Green Party on the lower level rank and file. But when it comes to the elites running the Green Party, I've gone through and I have experiences with all of the different parties. My experience, which predates Anna May Paul's experience with the Green Party, my experience with the Green Party is that elites is that they are a highly racist organization run by that's shadowy and non-transparent. And when Anna May Paul talked about it being a worst experience of her life, I know from my own experiences that the Green Party is not what it seems to be in terms of how it is run. In terms of anybody out here who wants to really save the environment with respect to global warming and climate change, the first thing we need to do is we need to get out of this mindset of left, right, and center, because the left, right, and center we're being manipulated by this construct of left, right, and center to completely distract us as to what is really going on with respect to the destruction of the environment. The left, right, and center construct has left us a paradigm in which we have, the right-wing people, including some, PPC and some members of the conservative at one extreme. Many of them will argue that either, global warming and climate change doesn't exist, or it exists, but it's just some, natural phenomena. We can't really do anything about it. That's sort of the right-wing perspective, so-called. And then we have on the left with the so-called NDP, so-called left with the NDP Liberals and the Green in particular. They'll argue that, oh yes, we do have global warming and climate change, but it's all pretty much the result of CO2 emissions mostly from fossil fuels. Both of these constructs are completely deception. There is climate change, as we all know, most of us know anyway. There is global warming, but not from the CO2 mantra that the Green Party and the Liberals and the NDP are pushing us toward. And again, this might seem a little bit strange to a lot of people, but before we can, in fact, appreciate, the type of deception that is going on, we first need to understand and appreciate the idea of a controlled opposition. Now, let me get that little sheet here that talks about that. Just spare me a little second here, and I'll get that out. Now, control opposition. Now, it was this particular website I'm referring to, newswithviews.com. It talks about control opposition I borrowed an alleged quote from Vladimir Lenin. It says, the best way to control the opposition is to lead it ourselves. And then the article goes on, this is control opposition. Control opposition is when a deliberate attempt is made to either create an opposing effort to any existing power base or to obtain control of any opposition to one's own efforts. Some protest movements are actually being led by government or corporate agents. Now, that's a very sort of interesting quote, but bearing that in mind, if we look at the substantive direction of the Green Party, we will see that let me get back to my screen here. The Green Party is, in terms of the history with Elizabeth May. Elizabeth May, in the late 80s, was an advisor to the Mulroney government. The Mulroney government is a very sort of conservative government back in the late 80s that fought for free trade, fought for a very sort of corporatist focus and a corporatist agenda. And in order to become an advisor to the Mulroney government, or any government for that matter, there's a rigorous vetting process. And if you're really an activist and that's there to challenge the status quo of environmental issues, what chance do you think is that a real activist is going to particularly get that type of job in the elite centers of government? Just think about it for a moment. And once we are able to understand and appreciate the idea of a controlled opposition, let me get to my screen here. I'm being interrupted. Let me get to my screen here. Just a moment. Once we get to the idea of what a controlled opposition is, then we also need to step back and also appreciate what appears to be going on. A sort of a non-human agenda, which was identified in an interview which I had with David Icke, talks about layers and layers of a non-human agenda going on. We talk about and basically what we see revealing itself is that there seems to be a concerted effort to destroy the world, and any sort of technology that's out there that can substantively save our world, is being repressed. So once we if any people out there are listening to this video, watching this video, who are aware of that type of phenomena, right now we're left with sort of basically a paradigm where we have fossil fuels on one side, and then we have so-called renewable energy, which is being advocated by the Green Party when they talk about the solar power, the tidal power, wind power, and all this kind of stuff. But many people don't know that these so-called renewable energies that are being put out there as being commercially appropriate things to talk about, those things have a lot of pollution with them, particularly wind power. Those blades aren't even recyclable. And when we talk about the uses of electric cars, the whole creation of the car, production of a car, and the energy used by these power generators, these electric generating stations for the electric car, they're not using pretty much not relying on fossil fuels, basically, and coal and all sorts of the same type of terrible sort of fossil fuels that we talk about. We're not making much more progress with respect to the type of pollution and the destruction with these so-called renewable energies are having on our planet, which includes hydroelectricity, which you all know creates dams and creates all sorts of mercury and all sorts of other destruction in the environment. So what's going on with respect to the global warming the global warming and climate change is that if we start to, there's a great interview which I had with Dr. Herndon, and there's also a lot of books about it, which talk about the real source of the climate change and global warming is a intentionally premeditated destruction of our planet by those interests which seek in their interest to create mass chaos. What appears to be going on is what Dr. Herndon, but to a great extent other sort of scholars refer to this term called geoengineering, weather modification. All these, there's the chemtrails, and Dr. Herndon talked a lot about these types of phenomena. Apparently, are the sources, based upon these expert representation by independent scientists. This is what is the source of global warming and climate change, and the CO2 fossil fuels is a part of yes, fossil fuels have a lot of problems. They are causing a lot of destruction, pollution, of the ocean, pollution of the air. But as far as global warming, that is, they are not the substantive, strongest reason for all that is climate change and problems we're having on the planet. It's coming from an intentional efforts to modify the weather to perpetrate a destabilization towards, and CO2 emissions is part of the deception. And so, all this stuff with the Green Party, the Green Party, again, arguably fits well within this context of a control opposition where they're not, where they, their whole, have you ever noticed that their whole sort of, their whole platform, I mean, the Green Party these days, they talk entirely, when they talk about their agenda is entirely focused on CO2, climate change. In terms of all candidates debates that I've had, and I listen to them, nothing to talk about in terms of pollution, plastic pollution in our waterway. They definitely don't talk about electromagnetic pollution related to 5G technology and related to cell phone towers causing all sorts of human health problems. They don't talk about that. They definitely don't talk about all these all sorts of stuff. They don't talk about the Green Party. They're entirely focused on an agenda which is designed to complement what the corporations want to focus on, and what our prime minister wants to focus on, and what certain political leaders want to focus on is a carbon tax focus of CO2 emissions rather than what's really going on. So what I'm suggesting for people to do is to do your own research. Don't just simply be very skeptical about rationales, reasons that are being put out there by mass media, which we have been, the same mass media, which have been responsible for all sorts of deception and cover up and concealment during this pandemic. If you want to truly save the environment and to find out what's the cause of environmental destruction, do your own research, getting away from Google, looking at alternate search engines, get away from all that censorship that, there's a lot of censorship goes on in sort of the Google search engine. So I'd advise checking out other search engines, and you'll see all sorts of valuable information if you're interested in going above and beyond the sort of propagandistic version of environmental protection that the Green Party is pursuing, and the Liberals and the NDP as part of a mass deception strategy, and to also get away from the deniers of environmental destruction that you'll find in the so-called right-wing groups that try to pretend that nothing is going on. All of this is part of an orchestration, because for people who know there's something going on, people who know that there's global warming and climate change going on, the idea is for us to regard those people as kooks who deny it, and for us to all of a sudden accept the propaganda which is being pushed by these so-called left-wing parties, which are part of the control opposition deception. So our Ontario People's Front, what we're about is we're not left, right, or center. We're concerned about providing a basis of a critical debate where scientific knowledge and knowledge from independent physicians are out and a part of the discussion, for us to have truly take control of our environment, and for us to be able to be aware of the type of real, earth-saving technologies which are being repressed, that we could utilize in order to save the environment for the type of destruction that's going on. But if we simply rely on the recipes of the Green Party, the Liberals, and the NDP, we're not going to be much further ahead, because they are substantively focused. They're substantively there to support a corporate agenda of deception, and that's not inconsistent with the type of human quality of survival that we're trying to pursue. So if we're trying to save the planet, we need to get out of this left, right, center mode, and we need to start looking at examining information critically in a way which is going to stop us on the path of destruction. And we can't simply do that by relying on the type of information which is the various propaganda channels, with particular reference to the CBC, that has sought to censor us through their apparatchiks Lucy and Amanda Pfeiffer. We need to get away from that type of censorship environment. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen to Ontario People's Front. We're there to support a real movement towards environmental protection that includes all the types of environmental issues which the Green Party is not talking about, or the NDP or the Liberals. And we hope to inspire other Canadians in this election who seek an alternative, who are skeptical about the type of misdirections which the Green Party, the Liberal, and the NDP are pursuing with respect to in their efforts to get everyone's vote. So thank you very much again for tuning in to another policy presentation by the Ontario People's Front.